Oh, we're live.
Nice. So
Hey,
what's up,
everybody.
Justin?
Not much, Mike. Everyone, Justin from the Camera Shop in Muskegon, thank you for joining us this evening. I am here with Mike and Miko. Sorry for the little back and forth. I am live here from the store because we opened officially to the public yesterday, Mike,
All right.
for appointment only. So slowly getting the ball rolling here. So we're excited to be back. People rolling in. Um, it's pretty exciting.
That's a
Um,
great sign, man.
yeah, it is. What's
Yeah.
happening? What's happening in your neighborhood?
Oh, lots is happening in my neighborhood. No, it's everything's going great. I'm still, hey Brad, I'm still here in Florida. Probably for another couple of weeks, and then I'll be heading back towards Ohio. So once there, I'll be out of the blue room and back into my office slash studio. So
Well, it'll be your blue room. Isn't that what they call like a movie studio or something like that?
they do, right? I have no idea.
It's something like that. It's some kind of room, you know. So at least you're getting that. Um, yeah, we got
Hey, Mike.
Tiford saying hi. Hey, Mike, how you doing? So as people are rolling in here, we like to come to you guys. We've been doing this thing since shutdown, called Wednesdays with Olympus is kind of like what we've coined it as.
Yeah.
And Mike and I get together every Wednesday night at 6 p.m. Of course, there was one exception this week because you had some vacation time. You got your girls with you and spend
Yep.
some
Picked up
family
my
time.
girls. Yep. Got my little Olympus bracelet there.
There you
One
go.
of them made.
That's fancy. I need one of those. I hope they're gonna make one for me.
I'm sure they can.
Uh,
Yeah, so I went and
this.
got the girls, and I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh
Yeah.
no, no, oh go no, go ahead, go ahead. You got the
Oh,
girls, and you're
so I got them.
enjoying.
So
I can
now,
see you're enjoying the weather.
oh yeah, absolutely. So now we're back,
You got this
and
nice golden color.
I know it's one thing I'll miss when I leave. But yeah, so we're back and back on track. And tonight we wanted to talk about the drive modes and the cameras. But yeah, every Wednesday we do this, and we're getting better at it, right, Justin? I mean, it's a little
Well, a
it was
little bit
slow
every
going.
time. Except
It's
for I think except for like what we're doing now, we're just kind of bantering about like, well, this is today.
Yeah, well, it's a tough slot at 6 o'clock, right, you guys? And so I think what happens is sometimes we're like on and we're ready to rock, and sometimes we're just like, oh, it's been a long day, and I'm not really prepared. I just want to talk, and so we just kind of go on. But we have, today we were going to talk about the drive modes, right?
Yeah, I guess you're procrastinating till the bitter end, right? It's like I don't want to talk about it. Uh, no, but no, what we do every Wednesday we do this for you guys. It's really just kind of like, hey, it's the pom pom squad for Olympus. Mike and I come to you, me as your camera shop host, Mike as your host for Olympus, and we really just try to bring some kind of tip to the table, and this is really a Q&A time for you guys as well. So if you guys have any
Yeah.
questions, we invite you while we're going through this to chime in. I'll be watching the comments, Mike will be presenting, and I'll intervene as we need to answer you guys' questions.
Yeah.
But we're talking about the shooting modes tonight.
Yeah, something a little different. And you guys, this is like a very open forum. So ask the questions. I don't know everything, but I can always, definitely get back and we can answer next week, the questions that I can't answer. And I'm not an expert on it. I'm almost an expert. I shoot the camera so much, like I know a lot about them, but there are things in there that sometimes I don't even get into. So, but I do my best. And then Justin helps, and we kind of like to just kind of throw this out here. So yeah, so we're talking about the drive modes, Justin. So and the drive modes in your Olympus camera, basically, or in any camera, but specifically tonight on the Olympus cameras, are like your single autofocus or your sequential shooting. Like if you're shooting, say, birds or sports, and you want multiple frames per second, things of that nature. So we're going to get into the different modes that are in different drive modes in the Olympus cameras, and then maybe why you would use some of those modes, or what they're for, or what I'm aware they're for, and things of that nature. Maybe what I use, or what you use as well. So yeah, so that's what we're going to do.
So
And are you ready?
I I am ready, man.
You are ready.
I've got my game fuel. I am ready, Mike.
My game fuel is water for now.
I should be drinking that. So you've got a presentation ready to go.
Yeah, very basic, you guys.
Okay.
This is just some images of the drive mode. So I'm going to try to share here. Now, you might be getting, at times, my signal might be a little bit off. I'm noticing the last week or so that I've been a little blurry here and there when I'm doing at least WebEx, stuff like that.
I've It looks
So
great right now. This is
it's,
perfect.
it's on and off. I think it's certain times of the day with the Wi Fi. So once I get back to my office, I'll be doing hardwire and it should be a lot better. So, all right. So right now you should see my screen.
And
Can
just
you see that, Justin?
make sure to drag that little message
Yeah.
box down out of the way there.
So I can put it like over there, maybe.
Yeah, and I think you can go lower. I think, can't you? There
Yeah.
we
So
go.
there we go.
Yep,
Okay. How's that?
that's perfect.
All right. So I can't see you guys, but you can definitely see my screen. So Olympus Drive Mode, and basically, what are they, and what would you use them for, right?
Well, and it would depend on a lot of different shooters. If you're shooting sports, portraits, things like that. So that's what we'll kind of be tuning in each one to those kind of things, right?
Absolutely. And if you guys notice, like the images I'm using, it says Michael Amico host on the bottom. I actually snapped those off my phone today from the actual camera, so I left the whole thing. But bear with me on that. The main thing is where it's highlighted in yellow or an off yellow, it looks like on here. But just to show you from the super control panel, or what I like to call the OK menu, when you press that OK button and it brings up that menu on the back of the camera. So this is your single shot focus. And this is probably the most common, I would say. I don't know if you want to jump in on that, Justin, but I would say this is probably the most common. It's what I use the most. I typically will put it in the center of my focusing. Right now, it's showing that I have 121 points selected on that graphic there, but I typically just do one single point in the center. And that's when I'm shooting like portraits. If I'm shooting like, let's say I'm doing a senior portrait, I might use the one single point and try to get it on the eye. Maybe move it around with a joystick if I'm using a camera that has a joystick, or the autofocus targeting pad. Move it around to where the eye is, take that shot, and that's typically what I will use for probably most of my general shooting. And I would say that most people probably use a single focus point. Most don't know that there's more to their cameras than that. So
And I would use, I mean, for the majority of the time, it doesn't matter what camera system you guys are on. I highly encourage most people to stay on single autofocus, because if you're on continuous autofocus, the camera's always looking for motion, so it's always going to be skipping in and out of the background.
yeah,
If you're
yeah,
using something other than an Olympus, I know that we're talking about Olympus cameras, but if you happen to be tuning in and you're using a Nikon, you're using a Canon, you're using a Sony, they have an autofocus called AFA, which means autofocus auto servo, which is essentially jumping back and forth between single autofocus and continuous autofocus, and that can cause some issues because a lot of people say, "Oh, hey, I'm missing focus on my shots." Well, it's because the camera doesn't, like, if I move my head just a little bit like this, the camera will say, "Oh, that person's in motion, so I need to switch to continuous autofocus." So your focus can jump in and out of the background. So what Mike is saying, when the ideal situations when you would want to use single autofocus are going to be for a majority of what you're shooting, in my opinion, as far as your landscapes are concerned, macro
right.
photography, portrait photography, things of that nature. Almost 90% of what you're shooting will be used with the single autofocus mode.
I agree. And basically, when you take the shot with that single mode, that single shot, sequential or single shot, when you hold that shutter button down, it's only going to fire once. So you're
Mm-hmm.
not going to fire 3 times, 10 times. It's only once. So what I'm going to do, you guys, really quick, Justin, I'm just going to grab us on my other computer here so
Of
that I
course,
can see myself
and here I
because I
am.
can't see me.
I
There
I
we
was
go.
talking about the focus modes. We're in the shooting modes. So single mode is going to be best used with single shot autofocus, not necessarily continue autofocus. So
Right,
yes,
right.
I kind of screwed that up a little bit in my mind. So my correction there.
Yeah, so basically, yeah, I did the same thing. I think I said single autofocus, but same thing. But I agree. I use single autofocus with the single point.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, in the Olympus cameras, I've been using the single autofocus plus manual focus
Mm-hmm.
with peaking, and so that way I can hit it with the single autofocus and the single shot, and then touch my focus dial, and it just boom, boom, it just like zing, I got red wherever everything's in focus. So if I want to focus on an eye, zing, the eye's lit up. So that's sort of how I do most of my shooting when it comes to, again, portraits. Even when I go out and shoot birds that are just, they're kind of like sitting there, just nesting or whatever. Like maybe a heron just kind of hanging out. You hang out for a long time, and I just sit there and shoot them. So that's sort of the single, kind of like the most probably common.
Yeah.
Um, the next one I'm bringing up is silent, and silent is awesome. I mean, it's just basically on the Olympus cameras. It's sort of interesting because they use a heart as the symbol for silent, which is interesting. Um, but that's your silent mode. We love it. Now I put down that I put a little asterisk that there's a rolling shutter, and basically there's a possibility of rolling shutter. And if you don't know what rolling shutter is, uh, basically when you have your single shot, like we had in the first slide, you have a mechanical shutter in the mirrorless camera, and that shutter curtain comes down in front of the sensor. Boom, it takes a shot, right? Click, click, click. With the silent mode, you don't hear that click anymore. You're not using that mechanical shutter anymore. What you're using is the camera is actually going to process that image. It's going to scan that sensor pretty much. So it's totally silent. There's no sound. The problem is that there's the possibility of rolling shutter, which is where it may not capture that image fast enough. Um, to get you to sort of understand, you almost need an example to understand that. So I'll give you an example. Your cell phone is a silent shutter, right? There's no mechanical shutter in your cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
So I have an image on my Facebook somewhere where I was shooting outside of an airplane window, and I had one of those propellers next to me, the prop planes,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
I shot it with my cell phone, and a couple of the propellers are bent, like they're almost like twisted and bent, like they're not normal, and that's because it couldn't process that shot fast enough. It was actually kind of cool, so I thought it was cool, so I kept it. But that's rolling shutter. You might
Are,
have
are
a
you
Gulf. Go ahead.
are you sure you weren't on like a Twilight Zone plane or something like that?
Oh yeah,
Where
yeah, definitely Twilight Zone.
you
But
sure there
another
wasn't a
example.
creature on the wings bending the propellers?
That was a great movie, man. It's a long time ago, right? That was a great movie.
Bill
But
Shatner. Yeah.
yeah, Vic Morrow. Um, but that's basically like somebody swinging a golf club. You might have a little bend in the club. That's all, rolling shutter. Now, again, you can get happy accidents, right? Like there
Yeah.
was one of the Olympus shooters on a Facebook page posted something really cool. He was like, "Why is my camera doing this?" He didn't realize it was rolling shutter, and he had like a tennis player, and it was the coolest thing. Like the ball was in the racket, and he caught it, and the shadow on the ground, the ball didn't hit the racket yet, but it was
Oh,
like this great shot. It was so
that's
cool.
cool. That's really
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
So he couldn't figure out why that was happening. It was rolling shutter. The camera
Yeah.
just didn't process the image fast enough. And so it doesn't happen a lot, but it can happen. And it's just one of those downsides of it. Also,
Well,
typically your flash will go off. It'll cancel your flash when you're doing silent mode.
and the other thing to add to that is that if you're shooting under LED lights, so right now I'm being lit by LED light panels. So
Hmm.
a lot of your stage lights nowadays, or even your gymnasium lights, are LED lights. That's just the nature of what we're moving towards. They're more energy efficient. They have a better power output.
Right.
At least as far as luminosity for the human, our brain is adjusting to all this, but cameras operate on wavelengths. Light operates on wavelengths, and so if you're shooting with silent shutter because you're not using a mechanical shutter, when you get faster than a 2/50th of a second, typically you can kind of see you'll see like the black bars in your images. So you'll see the light properly black, kind of like a black bar, the light properly black bar, and that's also a result of rolling shutter because it can't capture or stop the wavelengths. You're capturing the wavelengths of the light essentially.
Right. And the other thing is, kind of going along with that. Oh, I just lost my thought, Justin.
It's okay.
It happens.
Richard
It
Kefkin is saying
happens.
he's saying hello from the parking lot. Hi,
Hey,
Richard.
Rick.
And Ronnie's saying hi from Lansing.
Hey, what's up, Ronnie? How you been?
And we'll see you
Good to
soon,
hear you
Ronnie.
guys. Yeah, yeah, good to see you guys, or hear you guys, talk to you guys. Yeah, no, silent mode is great because let's say you're doing something like a wedding, right? I mean, you're completely silent. The camera's silent. There's no sounds going off, no beeps, nothing. Everything is just super quiet. Now you have to get used to that. You have to sort of know the camera's taking a shot, right? You have to kind of get used to the fact that there's no sound going on. But man, it can really, really be nice. And so definitely amazing. But oh, that's what I was going to say. You just brought up a great point on the silent shutter as well, is that you can go over that, like some of that. I'm losing my thought tonight, you guys. But you're like, you can go to, like, say, 16,000th of a second with silent shutter. So you have the ability to kind of change your settings a little bit on your shutter speed. That's what I was looking for, my shutter speed. So kind of neat. But yeah, so silent shutter is definitely a great thing to have in the cameras now. Um, and I apologize that I had lost my train of thought there for a minute,
Yeah, it's
but I
okay.
did. I
Happens
did.
to the best of us.
Yeah, and an anti-shock is one. This is the next one. It's got the diamond. It's one that I don't use, and it's a very interesting mode. Anti-shock. It reduces like possible blur you might get when you press the shutter button. So I, it's interesting. I mean, you could think of like on an SLR, you have a mirror, right? You have a mirror box. And so you have what's called mirror lockup, where it'll actually flip the mirror up, you take the shot. So if you're taking, say, a landscape as an example, you might want to use that mirror lockup, and you don't get that possibility of movement or shake in the image, even when it's on a tripod, because the mirror is not slapping down, right? In a sense, it's kind of the same thing. This actually it uses an electronic front curtain, and it actually sort of does the same kind of thing, except you're really not getting much out of that shutter. You're not really getting much movement out of the mechanical shutter on the mirrorless camera on these cameras. So I could be wrong, but what I understand on the anti-shock, and it's also available with the sequential shooting, like the high speed, low, and all that. Um, I understand it's more along the lines of, as an example, let's say I'm connected to a microscope and I'm shooting something in macro that's such a finite image. It's such a close focus that you're going to actually see some of that blur, some of that movement. And so you use anti-shock to get rid of that. So that's what I understand. I mean, you can use it obviously for anything, for landscape, whatever. I don't bother. I don't have any issues with the camera as it is for shooting like that. So, but it's definitely available. So, all right. So sequential high. Now this one, Justin, is your high speed mode. So now sequential high is a mechanical shutter, and you're up to 15 frames per second on a camera like the EM1 series, or even the EM5 Mark III. You can do up to 15 frames per second on sequential high. Cameras like the EM10, you're doing, I believe, 6.5 frames per second, if I remember right. Don't quote me. I'm shooting that off the top of my head right now without looking. But you're around that amount of frames per second. So it's a mechanical shutter. It's up to 15 frames per second. Now, with the sequential high, you're not going to be able to continuously autofocus. It's going to be single autofocus. So it's going to focus once, and then it's going to keep that focus when you lock down that shutter. It's going to actually hold that focus. So if you have a subject, like let's say you have a dirt bike jumping over a track, right? It's pretty much going to remain on the same plane of focus. It's not coming at you. It's sort of staying in that same plane of focus if you're looking at it from the side. Then you can actually keep it at high and get those shots in focus, right? So that's your sequential high. Now you also have sequential high silent, or I call it silent high. So again, similar to your single shot and your silent shot, this allows you to go up to 60 frames per second, a lot faster, because you're not using that mechanical shutter anymore. So super, super fast. Again, when you're using silent shutter, you're not using any of your shutter actuations. So when a manufacturer like Olympus says, "Hey, you got 200,000 shutter count or shutter actuations. You're good to 200,000 on your shutter." This doesn't affect it at all. It's silent. It's not using a mechanical shutter. So very,
So
very cool. Up to 60 frames.
so
Yeah.
really quick, because the silent mode, this is still applicable to the shock mode. So I was off screen because I was grabbing a book here. By the
Yeah.
way, Chris Slogger says hi.
Hey, Chris.
And Ronnie also was saying, because this is pertinent to what we're talking about. Ronnie says, I like the anti-shock on my OMD EM1 Mark One, but I
Yeah.
don't find it necessary with the newer cameras. Um, so
Yep.
what I read up real quick on the anti-shock is that the anti-shock diminishes the minor vibration and noises generated by the mechanical shutter when shooting on sequential or self-timer modes.
Okay.
So essentially, what you're doing, like if we were to set a delay timer on
Hmm.
a shot, um, it's getting rid of that extra vibration. Like when you touch the tripod and you're touching the actual shutter button, you're actually
Yep.
introducing
You get a little
shaking to
bit
the
of movement.
camera.
Yep. Yep.
So what that is doing, it's kind of like it's not buffering it, but
It's kind of compensating for it.
yes, it's compensating for
Right.
what that's doing. So um, that's the thing that you're getting out of that. It's kind of doing some things like they would do with Flash and like first curtain sync and stuff like that. So
That's exactly how it works.
yeah,
Yes. It's
so
very
it's
similar to
just
that. Yeah.
because I'm just kind of I'm gleaning through this real quick, but
Hmm.
they do mention that it's beneficial when shooting through a microscope or a super telephoto or macro lenses. So if you're shooting
Right.
macro, guys,
Yeah.
it looks like it's going to be really good for macro. In addition, it uses the electronic front shutter curtain. The
Right.
rear curtain shutter is not a factor in the shock reduction. So it's just kind of it's just kind of I want to say buffering, but that's not the right adjective. It's just
No,
kind
but
of
it's like I said, kind of like you're such a finite focus. Like let's say for macro, so the camera you're going to pick up some of those vibrations maybe, or some of those. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm at a loss for words tonight, you guys.
yeah.
6 o'clock is tough, man. I'm at a loss for words, but on certain nights. But yeah, no, I think you're just getting rid of some of those vibrations within a shot like that. I think a landscape and things like that, it could help, but I think it's so minute at that point
Well,
because you're wide that you're just
let's
not going to see it.
let's think of it this way: is that
Yeah.
if it helps to reduce the shock from the shutter
Hmm.
when you're shooting handheld and you don't have a
Yep.
tripod and you're shooting with some of the cameras that have the better processor to help you shoot at those longer shutter speeds
Yeah.
without a tripod, that may help with kind of that reducing some of that vibration because you're already shaking. But if you can just
Right.
minimize it even more, that's going to help things along for those longer handheld shots.
Sure. So something to play with, for sure.
Yeah.
Sequential high again, like I said, you're locked in, right? You're locked into um, one focus. You're focusing, and then as long as you're holding that shutter down, it's locked in, and it's predicting, the focus for the next shot. Silent high is where you can go up to 60 frames a second. I think we just talked about that. I went backwards. And that's super fast. I mean, 60 frames a second. I think when I first came into your store with the EM1 Mark II,
Hmm.
if I remember, I was trying to figure this out because it was the first camera that could do that. And you waved at me, and I got like 60 shots of you waving. And it's just like this, like every shot of you wave. Yeah, I couldn't figure this thing out because you couldn't hear it.
Yeah.
It was, you're
Well,
pressing the shutter. It was
and
very
you
sensitive. Yeah.
and you did it on silent mode too. You didn't do it on
Yeah.
mechanical. You did it
Like,
on
is this
silent
thing
mode.
working?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you're like, I don't know if this is working, and then he's like, oh yeah, because it was still buffering all the images
Yeah. Yeah.
on the memory card. So yeah, it's and again, people that like what sequential high silent mode is essentially doing. You're basically it's de facto movie. It's like you're essentially
It's almost
taking
movie. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, you're essentially taking movie stills, at the 60 frames per second, but you're doing it in a photographic way, not in
Right.
in a movie way. So
And RAW and or JPEG. So it's full resolution. It's pretty cool.
yeah.
The ability to do that is just amazing. And then, of course, you have sequential low. Now, this is what I shoot a lot when I'm doing birds and things like that, is sequential low. It's mechanical. It's about 10 frames a second. I say up to because I'll show you after where you can go in the menu and you can actually change the frames per second. So if you wanted to shoot like I think it's 8 or 5 or whatever, you can change that. I leave it at the factory settings, which is 10 frames a second in mechanical low. And that's for me plenty fast. There's times I use um, silent or yeah, the silent low, which I'll get into in a sec. But sequential low is where I'm mostly at. 10 frames is enough for me. I mean, if I'm shooting an air show, like the Cleveland Air Show, and I got 1,500 images at the end of the day, I don't really want 3,000. You know what I mean? Because I'm shooting even faster. So it's plenty fast for what I do.
And real quick to
Yeah,
interrupt, Ronnie did say the first curtain causes a minor vibration. With an electronic first curtain, there is no shutter shock because the beginning of the exposure bypasses the mechanical shutter, and that's kind of what the
cool.
book was saying. And then I've got a
Yeah.
question from Gene.
Thanks,
Says
Ronnie.
who doesn't see the thing. I'm checking that out real quick. I'll let you go ahead, Mike. I'm gonna look for
Oh
this.
no, I can. I definitely can. It doesn't see
Oh,
what because I can answer that.
he doesn't see the anti-shock mode on the EM5 Mark III.
Right. I'll show you in a little while how to find it and how to put
Okay.
it on your camera.
All
Yep.
right. So
No,
save that for later, Gene.
yeah, it's a great question, Gene, and I'm going to actually show you how to do that. Gene's question relates to I'm showing the super control panel. And that's it's obviously the easiest way to get to your shooting modes. It's where you
Mm-hmm.
want them to be, and some of the modes might not show up on your camera. Um, And the reason for that is you have to go into the menu and actually turn some of the modes on. So, and I'll show you where to do that. There's a certain place in the gear menu, Gene, where you can actually turn that on. I took some screenshots. So bear with me and we'll get to that in a couple of minutes. This is pretty quick anyway, and then we'll talk about this stuff. So Pro Capture, which is an amazing feature, right, Justin? I mean, I have
And
had so much fun with this.
it's one I haven't even used yet. So like
Dude,
everyone, we talk about it all the time, and I know Panasonic has something
awesome.
similar, and it's
Yeah.
just I still have yet to use it. Which you know what, I've got two cameras that can do it, right?
It's
The
yeah. I mean, it's amazing. The EM5 and the EM1 too.
Yeah, I
The
mean, and
EM1X and the EM13. They can all
I
do that.
I'm slacking, man. I mean, I've done it in the
Dude,
store, but I haven't done it. I haven't done it for my own enjoyment. Does that make sense?
you can put a water-filled balloon up and pop it and capture it. I mean, just something. Anything.
I should try that sometime.
Yeah.
That's what. Hey, we should do that for a class when we
Yeah.
actually have you here in person. Like
We can
popping
do that.
balloons. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, fill the balloon with like confetti and then pop it,
Oh,
capture it.
water, anything.
Yeah, come
Yeah.
on. We can have Kefkin shoot an apple.
You got to be careful with what we're shooting things with.
With a BB gun. But I'm just saying, no, it's really fun to work with. Now, ProCap High, so you can shoot up to 60 frames a second, and again, up to because you can change these settings in the camera. I usually leave them at the default settings, but with Pro Capture, you can change. I think it's like 10, 15, 30, 60, something like that. You could change it to one of those. You could do up to 35 frames on the EM1 series. On the EM5, I believe it's 15 frames still. You can change that as well. So you can do 35 frames, you can do 34, you can do 20. Then there's also another function in that menu that allows you to change shoot. I think is it called shooting capacity maybe, or maximum frames or something like that. It's another setting underneath how many frames per second or how many frames you want to capture. And basically what that is, Justin, is where when you hold down that shutter and you capture those frames, as long as you're holding that shutter down, you could set it for how many frames you're taking after you're shooting, basically. So as you're holding it down. So you can set it for say 25 and it'll take, 25 frames before it stops. So, you could fill the buffer. You could set it at like 999 and fill the buffer. So kind of cool.
Jeepers.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. So that's
Yeah,
ProCap High.
and we need to do something with that at some point.
It's really, really
Yeah.
neat. So there's also ProCap Low. And now the difference is that, and these are electronic, ProCap High and Low. It's electronic shutter. And the difference is that ProCap Low is up to 18 frames per second and up to 35 frames again. Now I use Pro Capture Low. And the reason is that, again, with the high, you're limited to focus. It focuses when you press that shutter and you're focused. That's it. With ProCap Low, it'll keep refocusing in between shots. So I like to have it refocusing. I think there's more of a my rate for capture is higher, and also, I just again I don't really feel I need such a fast frame rate, but it's cool, and you could do some really cool stuff. I've seen some amazing stuff with ProCap, and so it's a very 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 neat mode in the cameras for sure, man.
So a quick question. I don't know if we're getting ahead of ourselves here, Mike, but
Sure.
Chris is asking. So if we're shooting hummingbirds at a feeder using a tripod, what shooting mode would you use to get the best chance of capturing wings without the blur?
So there's a couple things with that because my brother-in-law, or I'm in Florida at my brother-in-law's house and my sister's house, and actually he just bought a feeder, and you cannot do pro capture with your. What I was going to say was it's really cool to use the phone and use the app to shoot because you could set up your tripod at the feeder, right? And you can go inside and shoot, but you can't do pro capture on the app.
Hmm.
So you can do pro capture from tethering. So if you tether to your computer and you can control the camera from the computer, you can do that, but you can't do it from the app. So the best thing to do, I would say, is to shoot with the low continuous, or low. I'm sorry, low continuous silent. And let me go back. I would use that. And the reason is you're doing up to 18 frames a second and you're capturing so fast, man. I mean, the 10 frames is cool, but if you're trying to do like hummingbirds, you really want to like capture them, I would recommend trying this. And I would probably set it for minimum like 25 hundredths of a second, your shutter speed. But probably more like, you probably have some light and everything. I'd be up in like, probably 32 hundredths of a second just to really capture those wings, 4,000th of a second,
Hmm.
and just stop that movement if that's what you're trying to do, unless you want movement, you know.
Yeah, and the other thing would be shooting on a day like today would be ideal is just being mindful of the light that you have at your
Yeah.
feeder when you're shooting.
Oh, yeah.
Um, the other thing I could say is with if you want more information and you're part of the EM1 enthusiast page, there's a lot of guys who are
Yeah.
people who are
Yeah.
capturing stuff just like this. And if you pose this question on that page, you're gonna get a lot of answers, and those
Absolutely.
people are happy. Those people are happy to share those answers too.
Yeah, the education group and the enthusiast page. So look up the Olympus. Is it the OMD education group? And then there's the enthusiast. Those pages on Facebook are great. They're mostly run by either a visionary or they're run by a fan. Somebody who just enjoys shooting Olympus, and they're very good. I haven't seen anybody being negative on there. You ask a question, and they definitely will answer. These guys, they love shooting, and there's guys that do some great macro work. There's guys that do some great birding, and they're definitely it's great to pick their brain, ask them how they shot it, what their settings were. I've never shot hummingbirds. It's something I'd love to do, so I'm still dabbling in the birding. Hummingbirds are awesome. I've only seen them a few times, believe it or not. But I would say you'd want to be super fast to catch those wings. So, but I would try this. I would try silent low because it's going to be nice and fast. And now you can do silent high as well and be 60 frames a second because what I would do is probably pre-focus, right, Justin? So
Yeah, you
I'd
can.
have my tripod, I'd pre-focus on where the feeder is so that I know I'm going to be within that focus area, and then I would just let it fly.
Yep, you have to really kind of plan out where they're going to come in at and just capture
Yeah,
them as they come in. Yep,
yeah. So leave
and
it in
set
manual focus and do
and
do
and
sequential high
yeah,
like
and set
that.
your depth of field to a point where you know that you've got a wider depth of field. Like
Yeah.
f8 or a little higher, just to give yourself that operating window of max depth of field or close to max depth of field. Yeah. So
Well, yeah, because if you're zoomed in on a feeder, you're going to throw that background out pretty good
yeah,
anyway.
yep,
So compress it all. So that's pretty much your pro cap. And I would play with pro cap too if you can tether.
yeah,
Otherwise, you're going to have to be connected to the camera. Um, this is where was it Gene that was asking?
yeah. Gene Carl's. I think Gene. Yeah, Gene.
Yeah, so Gene, this is where you would go if you want to make sure that some of these, this is where you basically customize your shooting modes, right? So if you go into your menu, your main menu on the camera, you press menu, it brings up this page on the left. You go to the gear, which is over to the left on the almost the bottom above the tool. You head over to the right, you go down to D1. And in D1, you're going to see these little settings. It shows a timer and it shows like a multi shooting, a sequential shooting image. If you go over to the right, you're going to see what I have on the right over here. And if you check mark, you hit OK on whichever ones you want to show up on your super control panel. So you don't have to have all these shooting modes on there. You can only put what you want to have on there, or you can have them all show up. But this basically allows you to kind of clean it up or mix it up, and you can check off or check whichever ones you need or you want. So that's basically where you go. It's D1 in the gear menu. And that's one of those things where, again, the Olympus menus are, I don't think it's just Olympus. The menus and the mirrorless cameras, I like to say, they're computers. There's a lot to them. Olympus does allow you to do a lot more customization, which I think makes people go, oh my God, the Olympus menus are confusing. But this is one of the things you can do because of that. You can go in, set it, and forget it. Once you go in and set that main menu, you're out. It's like mostly super control panel, maybe shooting mode 1 and 2, or camera 1 and 2. So this is one of those things where, oh wow, I don't have to have all of these on. I could just totally get rid of what I don't want to use, or I can put everything on. So
that's kind of the cool thing. Instead of everything
yeah,
being turned on all the time, and you're like, man, it takes forever to cycle through this. You can be like, well, I only use these two shooting modes, and
yeah,
you're just like, that's it. By the way, Gene
yeah.
Carlin says, I see it, and he says, thanks. So I think we're done here, Mike. We don't even like our job is done.
We're done. Okay,
Yeah,
we're
we're
done
done.
for tonight. It's been a long day. No, thank you, Gene. This is one of those things where it makes the class worth it, though, because I know we kind of drone on Wednesdays, but it's nice to know that somebody got something out of it. A one nugget, that's all that matters
That's
with these
all it
things.
is. I've had a lot
Yeah,
of people who they'll take the same class over and over again because they're like, you know
yeah,
what? Because each time, if I walk away with one thing, that was
just
worth
one
it to
thing.
me. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, or ask a question and we try to answer it. And even I learn. I mean, the anti-shock, stuff like that Ronnie uses it, and it's good to know there's uses for it that I can share after. So now this is the area where you would customize your maximum frames per second, like I talked about. So when I said it was like up to 60 frames or up to 30 frames per second, basically it's C1 in the gear menu, and you go over to either low continuous, or I call it continuous, but low sequential settings or high sequential settings. So my example here is low sequential, and you can see where my max frames per second, I have 8, 9, or 10, and I use 10. That's the default on the camera, but you can lower it if you want. If you don't want to shoot that many when you hold it down, most of this stuff I leave at default, and the default from the factory is going to be the highest frames per second. So on the high settings, it's going to be 60 frames per second, and on the low, it's going to be 10. And I typically leave it there. Now, to keep going, if you look at the left-hand side of the picture under low settings, you also have the silent mode. You have the amount that you can set, and then there's Pro Cap, and that's where you would go in to change either high or low Pro Capture, and you would set like up to 35 frames or 15 on the EM1 or EM5. I'm sorry, and it's where you would set like how many frames per second again and stuff like that. So all of those settings are right there in the gear menu on C1 to set those.
So you got two questions. Mike T.
Sure.
saying he's seeing some different things on the EM1 Mark II,
Hmm.
as far as the menus go.
Okay.
So these are the newer menus on the EM1X, EM1 3, and the EM5.
Well, this is coming from the EM1X right here,
Okay.
and I don't have them all with me, but you got a two. The two should be the same. It should be similar, unless they
It
moved it in a different spot,
it
which could
should
happen.
still it might not be in C, Mike. It might be in a
Okay.
different one. But what you're looking
It could
for
be.
is
Yeah. Yeah.
you're looking for release and image stabilizer. You're looking for just these shooting
Right.
options, and you
If you
can't
see
see
that on
my
the top,
mouse.
yeah.
Yeah, but Mike, if you kind of hover over the screen, kind of in
Hmm.
the menu options, if you find the menu that says flicker reduction, they're going to keep those in the same thing. So just kind of look for those things. They might have changed the layouts just a little bit because that's what designers like to do. They like to move things around. Now, Gene asked, he says, although I selected Pro Capture Low, it still doesn't show up. So I'm in manual mode, and it
Yeah.
only has Pro Capture High. It doesn't have Pro Capture Low. Pro Capture Low is
Okay.
actually
Hold on.
it,
I got the answer there. I think. What?
and
What? Oh, go ahead,
I'm gonna
Justin.
go to full screen here real quick on me.
Okay.
I don't know if you can see this, Gene. I've got the EM5 Mark III. I think that's what you're using, but I'm pressing this, And in some modes you can't use it. Like in automatic mode, it won't allow you to use it. I believe it's only in the P, A, S, and M's on your dial.
Yeah, I believe it's in Shutter, and
Yep.
yeah, I think you're right. Now, there's
And
another reason too, though, Justin.
okay,
What lens is he using?
um, that could be a
Because
good question.
so I neglected to mention this, but Pro Capture High works with basically all lenses, right?
Oh, he's saying that actually the Pro Capture is grayed out, so it's a
Yeah.
certain mode that you're in
No, it's the
that's
lens he's
caused.
using.
Oh, it's a lens. Okay.
Yeah, Pro Capture High will work with all the lenses, but Pro Capture Low only works with the Olympus. Shoot, I think it's well, actually Olympus Micro Four Thirds lenses, so it should work if you have an Olympus lens on there. So if it's grayed out, are they both grayed out, high and low?
That's the question. There's like a 30-second delay too, so
Oh, okay. Well, we'll go back to it, but it could be the lens if it's like say a Panasonic
oh,
lens.
yep. It's he's got the 8 to 18. That's why is
Okay,
that
so the
it's
Panasonic will work with the Pro Capture High, and the reasoning for that, I believe, is that it has to do with the focusing, where it'll constantly, continuously autofocus. There must be something electronically within that, where it works with the Panasonic Micro Four Thirds lenses. So, um,
there's always limitations to using third-party lenses sometimes.
well, sometimes it's I mean, there's nothing wrong with the 8 to 18. It's a beautiful lens, and it works for mostly everything. Um, but it's Panasonic and Olympus are different companies. So on the pro end, like something like Pro Capture, or even if you had like an Olympus 60 macro and you put it on a Panasonic G9, your focus stacking isn't going to work on the G9 with my lens, and with a Panasonic macro lens, my focus stacking is not going to work. There's certain modes now that we have, and I would say it's in the last few years. It's everybody doing their computational stuff, and all these different modes where it does work with like the high, which is fine, but your Olympus lenses will work with the low. It's just something to do with the focusing in there. That's all. They're just different focusing systems, but that's why it's grayed out. So it works. Just got to throw your Olympus lens on there, so and that'll work fine. Otherwise, the Pro Cap High, just for shooting like where you're gonna focus on something that's in the same plane, you're perfectly fine. So yeah,
And he's saying it's there with the Olympus lens, so
yeah, yeah. So
that's what we
that's
want
the
to see.
reason. But that's good because now you know that, and I always forget to mention that it's one of those. It's kind of like the focus stacking, right, Justin? I always forget to mention it's like only the Olympus Pro lenses and the two
Hmm.
macros, the 30 and the 60, are the ones that work with focus stacking. So there's always certain things that work and certain things that don't, but it's so limited. I neglect to mention them, so I apologize for that. And then I just wanted to talk about the timer. So you do have a 12-second timer, which is obviously handy if you're doing a self portrait or you're doing, I always think of group shots and things like that, right? But also you have a custom timer, and there's also 2 second, stuff like that. That's also in that menu I showed where you can check off the boxes on what you want. There's like a 2 second, I think there's a three, a five, something like that. I usually just leave the 12 second on my super control panel, and I leave the custom. And what that allows me to do is if I hit the info button, it brings up 1 second, times 3.5. I mean, I can basically customize it to what I want, and so I kind of leave it like that. And then once you set it, it's pretty much where you want it. So if I have like a 3 second timer, it's set. So I kind of leave that. And you know what? One mode I didn't show that I forgot to put in, you guys, was if you look down at the bottom picture where it shows the settings and info,
Don't
you'll
forget to
see.
use. You can use your mouse there. Don't forget you can get.
I can because I can't see it. Can you see my mouse?
Yeah. So just I can see it. You're in the bottom right corner right now.
Yeah, I can't see my mouse. But what I
You're
want to
not.
do is show you where the high res is next to the timer.
Oh, so if you guys can see the little custom timer mode, so move your mouse to the bottom left, Mike. Go down, 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 down. Keep going, keep going. Now stop. Up, 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 up. To the left a little bit. To the left. To the left. To the left. To the left. Oh, there we are. That's the high res mode right there.
Okay, so high res, if you turn it on in the menu, it will show up as the last setting for your drive modes, and I'd forgotten to take a shot of that. But basically, the high res mode, I mean, that's another awesome mode. If you have an EM1X or an EM1 Mark III, you can press the info button. And it'll give you the ability to change it to handheld or tripod mode, which is fantastic. So that's basically your drive modes. I'm going to get out of this so we could talk about it, Justin.
Yeah.
Of course, gonna get some weird stuff probably here, but there I am. Okay, cool. So yeah, that's the basics of it, just to kind of showcase that. But I know it's a lot of information. It's a lot of some of it's boring, but sometimes you got to go through this stuff, and you have all these different drive modes in your camera, and it's nice to know that they're there and what they do. And
well, hey, it wasn't as boring as reading it in a book by yourself.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And there's some good books out there, but the manual, it's better off just listening to us.
Yeah, and then for those of you who don't like the manuals, we've got the Rocky Nook.
Yeah, that's a good
books. We're still waiting on the EM1 Mark III, the EM5 Mark III, but if you guys have an EM5 Mark II, I've got those in stock. And if you need an EM1 Mark II, we can special order one of those books for you.
Yeah, the Rocky Nooks are awesome, man. They've always been very good.
These are the Bibles to your camera. So I looked up that mode when we were talking about the anti-shock, and I mean, it's just... So Mike was giving you guys cross sections. There's cross sections in this book with all the highlighted keywords and the menu functions to get where you need to be.
Hey Jason, how you doing?
He's making fun of you. He says, "Look at that baby face on Mike."
It's like well, I slipped last week, and I was so Jason. I had a trimmer. I picked up a trimmer, and I forgot to put the adjustment on there, and I slipped. So I'm growing it back. But yeah, it got tan. I had to get the rest of my face tan.
You're just evening everything out. Me,
yeah.
See, like you come on, I was getting color, Mike. You come on and you make me look like I'm still like raw chicken.
But yeah, so the Rocky Nook books have always been great. I mean, the manuals on the cameras, I'm not saying this because of Olympus. I think that all the manufacturers with digital cameras, we just have gotten so crazy with these manuals. They're thick. Sometimes you try to read them and you can't put them in your bag anymore. They're just too big. And sometimes they just have so much info, and yet they don't go far enough to really show you. Whereas the Rocky Nook books, they kind of dive in. It's layman's terms, much easier to understand. Mm-hmm. And so they're really good books for any camera system you have.
And there's pictures. It's perfect for it's a picture book.
I mean, when I used to shoot my old film cameras, my old Canons, I used to have the manual was that thick. You throw it in your bag. Yeah. And I'd have that and the flash manual all the time in my bag.
Yeah.
Now it's like, okay, the flash manual, and I can't put anything else in my bag. So
you can't do it. Yeah.
No. Just so you guys know, you do have your manual with you if you have the phone app on your phone. So you can actually get to a live manual from your phone app, the Olympus phone app, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, and Jason teed this up perfect for us. He says, "Hey, love the live comp for getting lightning pictures. Don't we have?"
Yeah, Jason's good at that. Yeah, we do.
Something...
Jason's really good at the lightning pictures, with or without live comp. Thanks, Jay. Yeah, we actually do. On Friday, we have a live composition class. I believe it's 3:00.
Yeah, 3 to 4. Yeah, 3 to 4 on Friday. Yep.
I'm going to warn you guys. I've been using WebEx, and the last week I've been having. Some people are able to see me well. Some people, there's a little bit of a glitch sometimes. It kind of goes back and forth. But my goal is to do a live comp, a little bit of a presentation mixed with actually having it live. So if you've ever been to my Coffee with Olympus classes at the store, this is basically what we're calling a virtual Coffee with Olympus. And my only limitation is it's virtual. And so virtual. If things aren't working, it's tough to do. But definitely join if you have an Olympus, because I'll show you what live comp is. I'll show you some of the different things you can do. And then I'll actually have I'll have something set up where we can do it live so you can see it working. So pretty cool. But yeah, that's the next one.
Yeah, and actually, I can tell you, Mike, what we're looking at for that class on Friday.
Sure.
We've got 55 people for that class
nice.
on Friday. So that's
yeah,
it's huge amount of people. So we're
probably going to cap it probably cap it at 60 or 65, only
Well,
because
we've got 100, but I don't think we'll, between today and tomorrow,
yeah,
I don't think you'll have to worry about it. And if,
I'm
and
worried
if
more
for
about the
the bandwidth,
wavelength or
the ba-
bandwidth or whatever the hell it's called.
the
Yeah,
wave, the wavelength,
the
uh,
wavelength.
the wavelength, yes. Uh, but
It's late.
if for some reason we have a bandwidth issue, we can always reschedule and get those people re-signed up to do another one, right?
The best thing to do is have everybody shut off their video. Just keep their audio. I keep
Yeah,
them muted, and it does help with WebEx.
yeah.
It's an interesting platform. So,
And when we
anyway, yeah. So
and when we
that's
say
Friday.
video, it's just their webcams, not your webcam. You will still
Oh,
be able to
right, right,
see.
right.
We'll be able to see everything on your screen, correct?
Yeah, what I'll do
Okay.
is just so you guys know what I've been doing with it is I have the chat opened up on the side, and if I can't get somebody from one of my colleagues to help me to kind of like monitor it, I'll probably have Justin monitoring it actually.
Oh, there you go.
Um, and what I'll do is, as the live chat goes, try to answer some questions, or wait till the end and answer the questions. But instead of jumping at me and talking, I keep everybody muted. Shut your video off, keep your sound on, and kind of let me do it and answer questions. Then we can kind of like chat, feel like we do here,
Yeah.
basically instead of talking. And otherwise, we got feedback going on. You got, it's a totally different thing than StreamYard, but it works. It works really well. So as long as
Yeah.
my bandwidth is good.
Bandwidth. It's all about bandwidth. Well, guys,
Yeah,
we're Mike. Does that wrap it up for your presentation?
it wraps it up, man. I hope
Yeah.
everybody enjoyed it. I mean, yeah, we can definitely. If nobody has any questions, we can cut it. I
Yeah.
appreciate you guys coming tonight. It was a tough night for both of us. I think we had long days today, and so but I think we did okay.
Well, and what I'll say is, for anyone out there who's got some last minute lingering questions, this is your chance. Speak now, forever hold your peace. But I will say this much, Mike. I learned something tonight. I actually learned a couple things. I learned like the
Yeah,
anti-shock. I always thought that was kind of like you were the anti-shock was basically telling the camera that I'm shooting handheld. So it was kind of like telling
right,
telling the stabilizer that you're doing, like, yes, this is exactly what I'm doing with it. But actually, it's to mitigate. It's like anti-shock from the shutter,
right.
which is I actually find really interesting. And then I also learned that you can go in and, like, of all the things you can customize, and I always pass over that menu option in the menu,
Hmm.
that you can actually toggle what shooting modes you want on and off,
Oh
which I
yeah,
think is really cool, because as someone who never uses Pro Capture, I can
yep.
shorten my menu to just
Gone.
like 3 modes, and that's great.
It's the same thing with, and I hate to say this because it's only on the newest cameras, so I know it'll come on to the rest of them. But like the EM5 III, the EM1X, and the EM1 III, we finally have the My Menu, or the custom My Menu or what have you on the bottom of the menu, the main menu. So, if there's certain things in that big main menu that you want to use, you can set them to the side and make your own menu. And it's kind of the same thing. Now you go into your super control panel. Here's what I use. Here's what I don't use. Like you just said, done. So
Um, Joe is asking what was the name of the reference book you mentioned, Rocky Nook.
Rocky
So
Nook, yep.
we can special order the EM1 Mark II, and we have the EM5 Mark II in stock. The
And
EM1 Mark
usually,
III,
Justin, it's
yeah,
called mastering, right? Mastering the EM1 Mark II, mastering the EM5
yes,
Mark II.
yep,
Yeah,
yep. The 5 Mark III and the 1 Mark III are still in kind of pre-production. It does take a
yeah,
while for the books to kind of follow the cameras, because you can't write a manual on a camera that does not exist. So
right.
it's hard to do that. Now, Richard, I'm wondering if this is an actual question by Richard. I'm trying to figure it out, but he's saying, Mike, my EM1X, if I go to the B setting modes on my screen, is dark and I can't get it to brighten up. Um,
So what are you at for aperture and shutter speed? Is it that you're maybe seeing, Rick, is it that you're seeing what your settings are and you're too dark? Maybe your ISO, your aperture, your shutter speed. And what mode is it just B? Are you in bulb or are you in live comp or live time on the B mode?
oh, he's in. Oh yeah, he could be in live comp, which would cause it to stay dark and do some weird things. So yeah, the bulb setting, you just gotta. That's what he said. B mode. B mode is the bulb on the dial.
Cool. Thanks, Rick.
Great, cool. Um,
Nice
yes,
picture, Rick, by the way.
yeah, him shooting. Yeah.
I love
Uh,
it.
so I don't know, Mike. This looks like it could be it. We said speak now, forever hold your peace. I'll let you get to your evening. It's beautiful here in West Michigan. I think I'm gonna go take. I got Winston here with me, and he looks like he's ready for a walk here.
Exposure, simulation.
Simulation. Yeah. Ronnie, I think I don't know if Ronnie's messing with us or not.
I don't know, but I miss seeing you, Ronnie. I can't wait to get out and see you guys again. I think it'll be a little while, but we're definitely on the right track. So we'll
Well,
definitely
the
be doing
the
some
good thing
stuff.
is, Mike, he gets to see you.
Oh, that's right. And what better is there than to see me and my
Well,
baby face?
yeah, and it's all like finely like colored. Like look at me, I'm pink. You're this nice golden color. I
I'm ready
can't
for
stand it.
summer.
Yeah, look at this. It's
It ends right here.
yeah, yeah, mine does. Mine does too. Uh,
uh,
Jason's saying time to head out. So he's saying everyone have a good night.
I'll see you later, Jay. Thanks for coming on board again. We appreciate it, man. And everybody, thanks for coming out. We do appreciate the support, and I'm glad that a couple of guys actually were able to learn something. A couple of you, and hopefully all of you. And we'll do this again next Wednesday as well. We'll come up with our ads for it, so you know what we're
Yeah.
going to talk about. But Wednesdays with Olympus, we appreciate it, and make sure you sign up for Friday for the 3 o'clock live comp class, virtual coffee with Olympus.
Yep, so this Friday, 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. It's free, guys. We've got the link and information on our Facebook page. You can click on the events tab on the left, scroll down, you should see our thing. If the link isn't working, I did put a link in the comment section so that you can go directly to the event
Cool.
and sign up. And then we'll schedule something for next week Wednesday, and we'll get the subject matter out to you guys so we can let you know what's coming.
Yeah, we'll do something fun. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Hey, have a good night, everyone. Take care.
And take care, everybody. Have a great night.